In this video, we're going to talk about everything related to WIP, also known as work in progress or work in process. Now, I want to start this video by saying in future versions of Odoo, there will be an easier way to calculate your WIP entry, and you'll be able to do that right from your manufacturing orders via the Actions menu. But for now, there's several steps that we need to follow in order to get the data we need for WIP. And once we have this all set up, it's fairly straightforward. What this is going to allow us to do is get the values that we need in order to make our month-end journal entry to accurately display our WIP on our balance sheet and offset our costs or expenses in our profit and loss statement. So let's begin. In manufacturing, I just want to walk through a couple of items that we need to understand before we can calculate WIP. We have two manufacturing orders that I created. One is in progress and one is just simply confirmed. Now, every time we create a manufacturing order, these components that we need create a move entry inside of our stock moves. And we're going to use that information to understand what products are reserved for picking in terms of our manufacturing process. So these products are going to come from our warehouse stock location and move into production. Now, one caveat to this, or one thing to mention, is that if you're doing a two-step process in manufacturing where you pick your components first and then manufacture your products, you can easily get the total value of your products by going to your inventory report and looking at everything inside of your production location, or your pre-production location rather. And everything in there you can consider as WIP. However, in this scenario, we'll just do one step, and this is a more complicated process. So let's go ahead and begin. We have two products here. This manufacturing order has not been started, but these two products are reserved for our manufacturing order that's scheduled. And then we have another manufacturing order that has been started, and we have two products which technically have been consumed, and you can see them here as checked consumed. Because we started the work order and the work order consumes these two manufactured products inside of this operation that we needed to complete on our shop floor. So using this information, we can determine what we want to consider as WIP. So we're going to look at inventory first, and then we'll talk about our overhead and labor. So now inside of inventory, we're going to go to reports and we're going to look at our move analysis. What we want to get out of our move analysis, this is where all of our stock moves are kept track of. Right now we have a default filter as done, but I'm going to remove that and I'm going to go to our list view. We're going to see some components here, raw material 1 and 2 twice, and they're both going from warehouse stock to our production location. And these are for our two manufacturing orders that are confirmed or in progress. And we'll see the status here is available. So what we care about is all of our manufacturing orders, the products associated with those manufacturing orders that are not done yet. So they're available, ready to go, but we have not completed the manufacturing orders yet. So what we're going to do is filter down our list first by looking at only products that are going to our virtual location production. So we're going to go and add a custom filter. And that first custom filter is going to be to make sure that our products are in the production location or going to the production location. So we're going to say our destination location is in virtual locations production. That's going to narrow down. Now we still have a lot of items here. Some of these are done, and we don't care about the ones that are done, right? Because those were already been accounted for. We only care about WIP for this scenario. So we have our destination location, and the next thing we want to filter down are ones that are marked to do. Now with this, we can get the total value of these products that are to do, that are going into our production location. However, there's a caveat here, because depending on what you want to consider as WIP, you will do this next step. And that next step is to look for products that have already been picked. And by picked, we mean consumed in the manufacturing process. So if I want to only consider products that have already been used in the manufacturing process and that consumption has been registered, then I can filter this further by picked is set, and I can save that, and that will show me only the items that have been picked. Otherwise, we're going to see all of the items that are currently reserved for the manufacturing process, whether they've been used in the manufacturing process or not. And that's totally up to you, and that probably is dependent on your manufacturing process. In this scenario, let's say we only care about items that have already been consumed in the manufacturing process. So we can also go ahead and save this as a favorited search, and we're just going to call this WIP. And we can come back to this every month at the end of the month to create our WIP entry. Now from here, we're going to go to our pivot table view. And what we care about is going to be just the unit price. I don't care about the count, just the total unit price. And our total unit price is $15. And that's because we have a few items going into WIP for our manufacturing process, and the total cost is $15. Let's just double check and make sure that's correct. So we have raw material 1 and raw material 2, and we actually care about the quantity as well. And we're going to use this to do some multiplication here, because we have one raw material 1 is $10 and one raw material 2 is $5. So we need to multiply this out in order to get our total value. So we're going to use this information. And just again, we're looking at our measures here. We're looking at our quantity and our unit price. Okay. So the next thing we want to do is export this information either to an Excel, or we can insert this into an internal spreadsheet so that we can quickly get the math that we need for our WIP entry for inventory. So we can create a new blank spreadsheet here. I can say that this is just going to be, I'll just confirm this, and we'll just call this Jan entry. Now all we need to do from here is do some simple multiplication, and we'll total that up. And this is the value of our WIP entry for that period. So $30 for this period. So that's all we need to do to get our WIP entry for inventory. Now we're going to use all this data later. So I'm going to leave this open, and I'm going to open a new tab. And we're going to go ahead and work on the next step. Now the next step is to get our labor and overhead costs. In order to do that, we're going to go into manufacturing, and I need to explain one important concept in order to understand where these items come from. So every time that one of our employees tracks time against a manufacturing order, that's going to be located under this work order. And if I open this work order up, under this time tracking, we're going to see that Kevin Zaki tracked 5 minutes and 28 seconds. And that has some costs associated with it. And the costs are going to be, determined or pulled from our employee costs as well as the total work center costs. Now, this is a model that's in Odoo. The model is called mrp.workcenter.productivity. And in order to calculate this most efficiently and effectively, I'm just going to add that as a menu item in our reporting so we can refer to that. And to do that, we're going to need Studio. So I'm going to go into reports here, but I'll just go into Studio at the top of our screen. I'm going to edit our menu, and I'm going to add a new menu item, and we're going to call this work entries. And it's going to be from an existing model. I can search more here, and we're going to do mrp.productivity, or rather .workcenter.productivity. And it's going to be model mrp workcenter.productivity, our workcenter productivity log. So I'm going to add that as an existing menu item, confirm it. And we will see it here at the top of our screen. If we want to edit our menu and move that under reporting, we can do so. Let's do that here. Okay, there we go. Work entries. Now under reporting, we can click on work entries and we'll see a list view that's going to give us all of our work entries in a list view format with our duration. Now there's a couple of other fields that are available which we're going to need to utilize. The first is our cost field here. When we drag and drop this cost field, this is actually going to be the total employee cost because this is really tracking the total employee cost. So I'll say total employee cost as a label so we clearly know what that represents. The next thing I want to do is add a related field. We don't necessarily need this. We can filter without it, but I like to add it. Here I'm going to say, is our manufacturing order? We want to see the state of the manufacturing order because we only care about in progress manufacturing orders. So I'm going to say MO state. Because if it was closed, then we wouldn't have to consider it for work in progress. Now, last thing I want to do is pull in our work center cost, and we can just do another related field from our work center. And we're going to do work center, overhead. Let's pull up the cost menu, and we're going to do cost per hour, which is going to be our work center cost per hour, and confirm this. All right, so this is the work center cost per hour. Now, one thing that's important to mention is that you can technically accomplish this another way via analytic accounts, but we haven't talked about analytic accounts yet, and I want to do this without analytic accounts. So let's go ahead and close that. And now we have all of the data that we need in order to calculate this out. We're going to again export this information, but before I do that, what we need to do is filter down our records to make sure that we only see items that are in progress. But before we do that, I want to go ahead and make another entry in here. Right now we have 2. So I'm going to go into our shop floor and I'm going to go into our work order number 2 here in work center 1, and I'm going to track a little bit more time. So I'm just going to click on it, which is going to track a few more seconds, and I'll just let the time pass maybe for 10 or 15 seconds. Now what this is going to do is create another entry in our log that we're just looking at, but I just want to show you that it's in real time so that we can do our closing entry. So I'll stop that now, and I'm going to close our shop floor and go back to manufacturing and look at our work entries. And now we see a new work entry for Kevin Zaki, and that was 37 or 0.37 of 1 minute, and that's in progress. So we're going to filter this down. I'm going to add a custom filter, and I'm going to say MO state is in progress. And maybe we want to look at to close as well. That's up to you. To close means that we finished production, but we have not yet closed out the manufacturing order. For simplicity, I'll just leave it as in progress and add my in progress. And now we have all of the data we need. And I can save this as WIP so that I can refer back to it. Now from here, I can just export this information, select all, export, and we're going to get the data that we need. I'm just going to remove all of these and just make sure that we pull in just the data we need. And the data that we need is simply our work center cost per hour. We're going to get the duration and the employee cost. Now what that's going to give us is all of the information we need to calculate out our total employee cost for WIP and our total overhead cost for WIP. So I'll export this out, and we can save this as a template, and this is going to be our WIP export, save, and export. Now I have that saved. I can open it up, and what I'm going to do from here inside of Excel is simply total this. So I can total the sum for my employee cost. This is my total employee cost. And then I need to calculate out my work center cost. So I'll insert a new row here. I'll say work center costs. And this is just simply going to be our duration, which multiplied by the cost per minute. This is our cost per hour. So we need to do 60 divided by 100. And this is going to be 22 cents and 328. or rather we did that backwards. So we want to do, no, that's correct. Sorry. So that's correct. So we're going to do 22 cents for our work center costs. And we actually exported the employee cost, but we wanted to export the total employee cost. So let's go ahead and export the correct thing. I'll just go back to my export wizard and we'll go to our WIP entry, and I'm going to take my total. Okay, so that might be a field that we cannot export, but that's not a problem. We can just calculate it out the same way we did it. So I will go back to my screen here, and what we'll do here is copy this formula essentially, which is we're going to multiply our duration times our employee costs divided by 60 minutes, which is going to give us our total cost here. So again, we have our employee cost, which was $75. And we have 2 lines, right? 2 entries. And what we care about here is the sum of our employee costs and the sum of our work center costs. So now we have $730 and $350. Okay, so that's all the data we need, right? We need to know our total employee costs in WIP, our total overhead costs in WIP, and our total inventory costs in WIP. Now the next thing we need to do is just make a manual journal entry in order to account for this accurately on our balance sheet. So let's go ahead and create a new journal entry. In accounting, we're going to go to journal entries here, create a new journal entry, and we'll just say WIP entry. And one thing that's important to note here is the point of this transaction is when we refer back to our balance sheet or share our balance sheet and profit and loss statement with our stakeholders, that there's an accurate depiction of the work that's being completed and our expenses, right? We don't want to have our salary expenses be super high without recording our work in progress, and then we think that we're having a lot more expenses and not producing anything for those expenses. So what we're going to do is create a journal entry, and this would happen at the end of the period or end of the month, and we're just going to simply reverse it at the first of the month. And we can do that pretty automatically. So we're just going to, first we're going to add an account here, and we need a WIP account. So we don't have one yet. So let's just save this as a draft. And we're going to go into our configurations, chart of accounts. We're going to create a new asset account called WIP. And let's just do WIP. And back at our journal entries, we have our WIP entry here. Our first line is going to be our WIP account. We're going to add that total value. So we have 350, 730, and here we have $30. And this is our total WIP, which is $40.80. So we'll debit our WIP account for $40.80. And now we need to offset this. And typically you can either do this off a general absorption account inside of your expenses, similar to how we explained in our previous video for manufacturing accounting, or we can do it against specific accounts. So maybe for our current assets, or rather our stock valuation, we want to reduce the cost of our stock valuation. We want to reduce our expenses for salary. And maybe we have our salary expenses. Maybe we have a different GL account for the manufacturing salary expenses as opposed to general manufacturing expenses, or rather as opposed to other labor expenses. And then the last thing we want to do is our overhead bucket or overhead GL account, which can be, any overhead accounts, right? We can divide this up however we see fit. In our previous example, we just said that we're going to count it as our electric. And we'll just do that now, just again for simplicity. So the first thing is we know that our stock valuation account was $30. So we'll do 30 here. And then our salary expenses was 730. So we'll do 730 here. And then finally, we have 350. That's going to balance out our journal entry. Okay, so we have our accounting date set as the last day of the month. We're making our WIP entry. Our WIP entry composes of debiting our WIP account to increase and show WIP in our balance sheet. Then we're going to reduce the value in our stock valuation account because we moved some raw material into production. Next, we're going to reduce our salary expenses by crediting that account. And then we're going to reduce our electric bill in this scenario, but again, that can be any overhead, by 350, which gives us our balanced journal entry, which we can post. And then we're immediately going to reverse this entry. And we're going to reverse the entry on the first of the month. So let's click on reverse here. And we see this move is configured to post automatically on 2/1. And what that's going to do is when we reference back to our balance sheet or profit and loss statement or give it to stakeholders for that ending period, quarter, month, whatever it might be, we have an accurate depiction of our work in progress while reversing the entry for the first of the month so it doesn't convolute any of the other journal entries that are going to take place automatically. So now on our balance sheet or profit and loss statement first, I'm going to move this to, okay, we have this financial year. We're going to see our electric, our salary expenses, and then inside of our balance sheet, let's move this to the 31st. And we see our work in progress, which is 4080. And then on February 1st, which is not posted yet, we'll have this WIP cleared out. And everything will go back to how it was previously so that we can continuously make this journal entry. But when we compare our periods from period to period, we can see the transition of or the change in our WIP account or the change in our salary expenses or our overhead accounts. And that was one of the main purposes of keeping track of that WIP. And it's particularly important when we have long manufacturing cycles. For short manufacturing cycles, it may not matter as much or not matter at all, but it definitely matters when we're talking about several month production costs for particular products. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is how we're going to do this every month, right? It's fairly straightforward and simple. Once we have this set up, which took us just a few minutes here, if I go into my reporting, I look at my move analysis. I'm going to go in for a particular period of time. I'm going to filter this down by WIP. This is going to be what I care about, this value here. We're going to look at our quantity, our unit price, and then we're going to export this information so that we can do the math to get our current, our total value for each piece. Then we're going to go into manufacturing, go into our reports, get our work entries, filter this down by WIP, get our new entry, export this, do the math once again, and create one manual journal entry. At the end of the period, it should take no more than 5 minutes to complete this process, and then your books will be as accurate as possible. Now, the last thing I want to mention is that in our manufacturing, if we were to complete this in progress order at the end of the next month, let's say, or in the middle of the next month, we don't have to do anything special. As soon as we manufacture this item, our average cost for our manufactured product will get calculated. And then when we sell this product, that cost of goods will get recorded accurately. So now if I produce all here, and I go into our inventory, and we look at our products, and we look at our manufactured product, we're going to see our total average cost is $39.47. And then we can sell this product to one of our customers, or maybe we already had maybe this was a made to order product, doesn't matter. We'll sell this product, confirm it. We'll deliver this off to our customer. And we'll create our invoice and confirm. And we'll see that our cost of goods sold is going to be debited for this $39.40. And everything is accounted for automatically. But we still had the added benefit here of keeping track of our work in progress along the process.